Ho 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 and Merry Christmas to all of you who celebrate at this time of year. But today we're not going to be concerned with baubles and snow and Santa Claus. We're going to be looking at this instead. Recently I made a mini ITX machine to go under my television to do some 1080p modern gaming on, and I thought it would be rather nice to get something similar to do some retro gaming on. So I went looking and managed to get for a reasonable price this little Shuttle PC here. We've got a XP Home Edition license at the top, which is all faded, and yeah, Shuttle written across the side. Now I always thought Shuttle PCs were like a type of PC, but it turns out they're actually a brand of PC. So the company was formed in 1983 by David and Simon Yu, I guess they were brothers or something, under the name Holco, just to trade in motherboards principally, I think it was, to start with. So they went on to become quite a big motherboard manufacturer and then broke out into making systems based around things like the DEC Alpha. In 2001 they made a cool little machine called the SV24, a compact all-aluminium computer using desktop components. That's how it's described on Wikipedia. And then the following year they evolved it a bit further and they were based around Pentium 4 and Athlon processors. In 2003 they expanded the range massively. 8 different XPCs were launched over a variety of chipsets and using different processors. And it's one of these 2003 range that I believe we're looking at here. So we'll get into a bit more detail about what's inside in just a moment. So if you take a little look around the back, we can see some innovative stuff going on. Printer port, like right at the top of the case. Got what looks like a teeny little power supply, and where the fan would normally be, it looks like a big heatsink of some description. And then we've got a serial port, and it's got a VGA port, so I guess there's some kind of onboard graphics going on. Got our Ethernet, Firewire on the back, and then we've got 4 USB 2 ports below that. We've got PS2 mouse and keyboard, and then sound split out into 2 little sections by the looks of it, so I guess that's in and out possibly. So we'll open her up and have a look. I'm sure it needs a clean, and I'm super curious to see how this thing hangs together, because I know what ITX is like, but I guess Shuttle was a proprietary form factor made by Shuttle, because I'm not sure if there were clones of these kind of PCs or anything similar. So yeah, it's super compact, super well organised. We've got an AGP port, which is important, 8 times AGP. We've got a PCI, so theoretically you could have separate sound card and graphics card in here, which might be something useful for what I have planned for it. There's some proprietary stuff going on, like the printer port cable that goes up to the top there. So it looks like some kind of caddy to hold all of the drives, so we'll start getting that out. It's quite cool. All just slides out as a great big lump. So this thing only has a DVD drive and a hard drive, which I'm pleased to say is still in there, and no floppy. Probably going to need a floppy, I think. Wow, look at that. Now that we've cleared the ribbon cables away, there's some kind of weird CPU cooler, like heat pipes, like some kind of steampunk contraption. I've seen something similar to that on a POS system that was a Pentium, potentially a good little gaming machine that I did a video of a while back. Seems a solution for compact machines where you can't put the fan directly above the CPU. I think the first thing we'll try and do is get at the CPU. So there's like toolless fan screws on the back, which is quite handy, but I can see that there's like a fan on the back of a big kind of heat sink there. So once the screws are off the fan and the heatsink at the back, there's 4 spring-loaded screws, a bit like you'd have on a water cooler. It's kind of like a water cooler, except I guess it's air pipes going through the block instead of water pipes. So yeah, that dissipates the heat through those tubes, which then gets blown out through the fan and the heatsink at the back. Quite clever. So I didn't realise, but I'm going to have to take the printer port out as well, because that's kind of sitting directly above the fan housing and you can't lift the fan out with that in place, which is why it's on that little flexible ribbon cable presumably. After that the whole thing comes out, 2 parts, one for the heatsink and the fan sits inside of that. There it is, state-of-the-art mini PC cooling. Little fan housing there, and that plugs into the motherboard as usual, and then it's got that sort of gap that allows this heatsink to sit inside of it, pulling the hot air away from the copper plate that sits over the top of the CPU. And we've even got the logo XPC embedded in the shroud for the heatsink. time to clean up this gunk. Okay, so there's a single memory stick in there. We've got 2 slots, and if we get that out, and it appears to be 256 megabytes of Corsair value RAM, so we'll probably just keep that in there for now. Then we can get to the CPU and get that out. I have no idea what this is. It didn't say in the eBay listing, so exciting. Sempron 2800 plus, so it's socket 754, and we can use lots of Athlon 64s to try and make this a bit faster. I'll probably put this back in for now though. So we've got the PSU out. It's a little Shuttle branded 250 watt thing, and that might limit me if I want to upgrade graphics cards as to what I could put in here, but I should be able to get something for some reasonable Windows XP gaming in here, I think. So there's some other space saving stuff going on here. Get the IDE cable out of the only IDE port on the motherboard, so it's a single IDE channel. At the front there's a ribbon cable similar to the ones that you see on laptop motherboards, going into one of those little clip things, if I can get my fingers in to get it out. So that's quite a cool idea. I hate fiddling with normal motherboard front panel connectors on motherboards with the pins. This is a much easier solution as long as you don't rip the cable. So we've got all the bits out of the way now. You can see the motherboard clearly underneath all of that dust. So it's held on by 4 screws. It looks like it's going to be a very tight squeeze to get it out, but I want to get it out and give it a brush to get most of the muck off it. So this thing was wedged in pretty tight. There wasn't much room on either side for manoeuvring, mostly to do with the bits and pieces that were attached to the case. So there's quite some nice cable management going on here. There's lots of clips and things to run your cables through, but they just get in the way when you're trying to pull the motherboard out. There's literally millimeters on either side, and you have to pull it so that it's in front of the I/O panel before you can slide it out. But a bit of fiddling on, eventually it came out. It's a cool little thing. Mini ITX before Mini ITX was even like a twinkle in its creator's eye. So yeah, we've got socket 754, as we've already discovered, using the VIA K8M800 chipset, an AGP slot, and we've got a PCI slot. Underneath that black heatsink is a graphics chip that I've never heard of before. It's VIA S3G Unichrome Pro. So it's DirectX 7, no hardware TNL, shared memory. Pretty rubbish really, so I'm not going to be using that. And we've got the ubiquitous AC97 for audio. Not great, but it'll do for now. So all it really needs is the obligatory brush with the anti-static brush to get most of the crap off it. It is just all surface dust, there's nothing really ganky on it, so this should do. Now I couldn't find much information about the motherboard googling it, but I do know that it is called an FX83. I guess it was a proprietary thing made for or by Shuttle, and Shuttle are great because the site's still going and they're still making machines, and they also still have all of the old stuff, all of the old info for these machines, so you can get anything you want, and most of the drivers are still there as well, which is cool. So one of the things that bugged me about this was the beige things that were in it, the beige DVD player. So this is the Silver Beast, a machine that I built ages ago that I haven't looked at for a while, which has silver ones, so we'll steal those. The case is all a bit cleaner now, so we can start putting it back together, beginning with trying to squeeze this thing, this motherboard, back in with its millimeter clearance on each side, but it's actually easier to get in than it was to get out. Silver drives are in now and they look a whole lot better. So really it's just a case of putting it all together, and I think I'll probably put a graphics card and a sound card in it. The ultimate aim for this thing is for it to go under my TV next to my Mini ITX gaming rig, so that I can play Windows 98 and XP games, hopefully some DOS games as well, and at some point I'll probably revisit this machine to set it up as a dual boot and also to upgrade some of the components. The other big thing I'm going to do with this is explore Media Center a little bit, maybe make a video about it. Back in the mid-2000s I actually had an Antec case with a TV tuner in it, and everything went through that, my DVD watching, all of that kind of stuff. So it'd be fun to go back to that, and also to explore some of the crazy peripherals you could get, all of the weird wireless controllers and keyboards and things. But this time I hit a snag. Wouldn't be a fun with retro day if it didn't or break on you at some point. So the original hard drive stopped booting, so it just froze on the splash screen. So I grabbed a few more out of the collection, hoping one had an OS already installed, and this one had Windows 98. It boots fine, so it proves it's an issue with the other hard drive. Hopefully just a corrupt boot sector or something that can be fixed and I can still use it. This turned out not to be so bad because I want to dual boot Windows 98 and XP, and you have to install Windows 98 first so that the bootloader on XP, when you install it, comes into play and allows you to switch between them. I don't think you can do it the other way around. I think you have to install Windows 98 first, so that's fine. So it's all back together and we can put some thingies in it. So I've chosen this, a nice boxed 9600 XT. It's a very tatty box actually, but it's nice to have a boxed one. So the TDP on this is 40 watts, I believe, and the Sempron I think is pulling about 60, so hopefully that should be fine with this PSU. Yeah, I got this a while back in its tatty box, but I was still pleased to get a box. Always nice to have boxes. But yeah, this thing and the Sempron pulling about 100 watts out of the 250 watt power supply probably leaves a bit of headroom, possibly for a CPU upgrade. This will give me good mid-range gaming, which is all I really want. I just want to play it. I don't want to get nerdy about all the detail and stuff. So yeah, be a nice little addition, and I'm glad to actually get it out of its box and put it in a machine. So we've got one of those little flap things that pins the cards in place. Probably will put a sound card in there at some point, but we'll get the graphics card in to start with. It does kind of look neat. It doesn't matter kind of what you do with these machines because everything's packed in so tightly. It looks neat, and that card is going to be right up against the side of the case. I hope that's not going to be a problem with airflow with a chip like this. Obviously these things are probably designed more for passive CPUs for media centers and stuff like that, but we'll keep an eye on the heat as we play games on it. So will it boot? Moment of truth. Yeah, so it's going to Windows 98, no problem. So hopefully that's it as far as building's concerned. We can just get on, install some drivers and test out with some games. So now that I'm happy it's all working again, I could get the final screws in. The bezel can be secured. It just has two flat screws that get screwed into the top once you push it into place. The silver on there is a bit blotchy. I'll probably, when I come to revisit this machine to actually put it under the TV and start using it, I'll probably take those out again and give them another bit of a spray with some silver paint just to get them a bit more even. But they look much better than having beige ones, or black ones might look okay, but I think the silver ones look better. So I've got the Radeon drivers on. I've installed the AC97 drivers for now. I might put a Sound Blaster Live in there, so let's see if we can get any sound out of it. Always helps if you have the speakers plugged into the right jack. There you go. Beethoven. What more could you ask for? So things weren't as plain sailing as they ought to have been. What I had was a terrible job getting the VIA 4-in-1 driver onto this machine. First of all, it kept on saying there was a registry error as I tried to install it, but couldn't figure it out. I was getting IRQ conflicts with the IDE controller, the VIA one, with something. What it turned out to be was, because this only has a single IDE channel, Windows was installing dual 2 IDE channels. It wasn't recognizing the CD drive, and the reason was it was getting itself muddled up between the 2 IDE channels, so all you had to do was go into the settings of the VIA one and tell it there's only one IDE channel here, and then delete the dual one that Windows installs, and everything started working fine. So it's all back together now. I did put a Sound Blaster Live in, though I forgot to film it, so there's no AC97. It's running on a Sound Blaster Live. We've got the 9600 XT in there. I didn't put any more RAM or anything in, but at some point I probably will look at upgrading the CPU and upping the memory. Big stack of games. The postman came while I was doing this morning, so I've got a big stack of games for £30 off eBay. I'll try one of those out now. So none of these games are particularly period correct for this machine, but we'll just grab one anyway. So we've got this Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Covert Ops Not my kind of game, I gotta say. Not really a first-person shooter kind of person, or one of these tactical shooter type things, but we'll give it a go and see what it's like. Anyway, I installed it and gave it a go. Why not? And yeah, it looked pretty crap, to be honest. Eventually I figured out that I was running it in 640 by 480 at medium detail, so we upped it to 1024 by 768 at high detail, and then it felt a lot better, and it's still playing pretty smoothly as well, so all cool. And there we go. Yeah, so there you go. What a cool little machine. Look at it. It's not even as big as the pile of boxes, the game boxes. Definitely be coming back to this machine in the new year and trying to hook it up into a modern living room environment with a big flat screen TV and see if I can get it working as a sort of easy to play on retro gaming rig. And yeah, that'll be fun. Mess around with some media center stuff as well. So that's pretty much it for this video. If you're celebrating Christmas, have a good one. Have a good New Year when it comes around, and I'll be back with more videos, more than I did because I've been lazy over the last 6 months or so. Get back to regular postings, and I hope to see you then. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.